Greetings, counselors. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's webinar is actually a little different than what we normally do. This is a Q&A session designed with new counselors in mind. We know that as someone that's new to the profession, you are drinking from a fire hose. And we also know that this is the season of picking classes and course advising. So we thought we would do a webinar Q&A style for you just to answer any questions you might have about this process, which can be intimidating, especially if you are new to the field. So what we have done today is we are going to have a couple of veteran counselors, experienced, wonderful counselors here to answer your questions. But also on the webinar, we have some counselors who are new to the field who are going to be answering questions in real time for you. You also can ask questions. There's an Ask a Question tab for you. So please feel free to put your questions in that box, and we will do our very best to get to everyone's questions. But if we do not, we promise that we will email you an answer so that way you have all the information you need as you go into this season. So we have a lot of questions I know out there. So we're going to just go ahead, jump in, and let me introduce you to uh, your panel. So we're going to start with our veteran counselors. Christy, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Christy Conley. I'm a high school counselor in Bogart, Georgia at North Oconee High School. I've been here for 20 years and a high school counselor for 23. Excited to be with you all today.
And Kelly?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Simmons, and I am a school counselor at Streetsboro High School, which is about 35 minutes southeast of Cleveland in Ohio. And this is my 15th year as a school counselor. And prior to that, I spent about 9 years in higher ed, 7 of those in college admissions. So I've been on kind of both sides of the realm here. And just like Christy, excited to be with you guys today.
Wonderful. Thank you. And now I'll let you all meet our newer counselors to the field. Christina.
Hi, everyone. I am Christina Brantley. This is my 6th month as a high school counselor, and I work with grades 10 through 12. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia at Midtown High School, and I went to Clark Atlanta University for my graduate degree, Howard University for my undergraduate degree, and for 10 years I was in marketing before I came to school counseling.
Hey everyone, my name is Ashlyn Burdett. I'm over in Amarillo, Texas. I'm at Caprock High School. I'm actually our freshman counselor, so I only have freshmen. They are very exciting. They keep my life very interesting. I think that's it.
Good afternoon. My name is Sierra Oden. I am the 9th grade counselor over at Stevenson High School. It is located in Stone Mountain, Georgia, which is on the outskirts of Atlanta.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Philly. I also live in Amarillo, Texas. This is my first year counseling students, and I have grades 9th through 12th, and I am at Tascosa High School.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today. And I'm sure our audience is going to really appreciate you all representing the newer counselors in the field. And I know you all are going to do a great job representing. So we're going to jump right in. Like I said, there are a lot of questions that we want to get to for you as well as for the audience. And so our first question actually is going to come from Sierra. Sierra, you had a question about course selection?
Yes, I do. I wanted to know, what advice could you give to a new counselor about course selection?
I'm happy to take this one and talk through this with you. Course selection is a big part of the process, especially during this season of our job. And so one of my mottos during this season is for students to kind of begin with the end in mind. And so what are their goals? What do they want to do after they graduate from high school? And how can I help them reach those? Am I going to be helpful for them and open some doors for them, or are they going to find some doors closed because some of the choices that they've made in those course selections? So I kind of have things that I go through in my mind and talk about with them, such as, are they on track to meet graduation requirements? That is my principal's number one objective and our school's number one objective, but are they going to be able to walk across the stage within the time frame that they're supposed to? And am I helping them to reach that? Are they also meeting the expectations of where they want to go for post-secondary school? Do they need to have certain APs? Do they need to have certain rigor or extracurricular things that they're taking some CTAE classes, some hours in certain areas that could help them reach that goal? And so I'm talking to them about those. We also talk about balance. You know, we as adults want work-life balance. I think it's important for our students to have work-life balance as well. So are their classes manageable with the extracurriculars that they're doing and everything else that's going on in their life, particularly if they have to work to help supplement income for their families, some other extenuating circumstances. And then just thinking about other special programs. For our school, we offer a work-based learning program so that students can leave school and go earn credits or hours in certain areas that could be specialties, but they have to do certain things to get there. So am I helping them to plan for that and to think about those options, particularly as a 9th and 10th grader, and exploring those opportunities? We also talk about special circumstances. Do you have learning disabilities? Do you have health issues? Do you have other personal obligations or things happening outside of school that could impact your schedule? And how can I help you think through that with building a balanced schedule? Also, just one more factor that we do like to take into consideration is if they're first generation, low income, or underrepresented students in certain classes, how can I help them to feel comfortable moving into those, feeling like they have the resources that they need as they think about different courses and expanding outside of their comfort zone.
Thank you, Christy. I really love that you mentioned the work-life balance. So many times we think about that for adults, but we don't really think about that for students. So I'm glad you brought that up. Um, Before we go on to our next question, I did want to ask the audience just how confident do you feel in this moment as it relates to course selection? So as we go into our next question, you can answer that survey, which should have popped up on your screen right now. Let's see, Ashlyn, you also had a question about course selection. What is your question?
Yeah, so Christy kind of touched on this a little bit, talking about balance. And that's definitely something that our students need some extra support with. But when you're sitting down with a student and you have their transcript in front of them and you have their choice sheet in front of them, how do you balance the wants versus the needs?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that one. So just like Christy said, I think as a school counselor, graduation requirements are at the top of the mind, right? Like that is one of our key responsibilities is to make sure our students are getting the graduation requirements that they need. So sometimes that matches up with our students' wants and sometimes it doesn't. But we have to be diligent because we are responsible for clearing that student for graduation. So we definitely need to be on top of making sure they're meeting those graduation requirements as a top responsibility. I think it's interesting to kind of take this by maybe school year. So Ashlyn, I know you work with all freshmen all day, every day. God bless you. So I think freshmen needs they have a lot of wants. You know, they see all these different types of classes and they get really excited, which is cool because most of the current high school students are like, yeah, I've been around, right? But the freshmen get really excited. So it's sort of managing a lot of their wants and letting them know they do have opportunities throughout their time in high school. They don't have to take every single elective that they want or every single AP class that they want all in one year. So making sure they sort of understand that this is a whole planned sequence. This is a 4-year operation. So sort of managing maybe freshman expectations. And then helping your students throughout those beginning years of high school understand the course offerings and making sure they understand those course descriptions that you have for your courses too, because what they think the course might be may not be what they expect it to be, just by the name alone. So really having them dig a little deeper to understand, is this a real true need, or is this a want, or is this something like, oh, that's not really what I was expecting at all. We use, my counterpart and I use the words plan and fit a lot. What is your plan? What is your plan after high school? What do you want to do? And that's the end goal, right? But what is your best fit? And then using that plan, what's your plan to get there to achieve your best fit? So making sure that they kind of do a little soul searching and taking the most challenging courses for themselves. And that's not necessarily you're taking all honors all the time, all AP all the time, or all general education classes all the time, but it's really about what is the most challenging, what they want to get out of high school, and how does it fit with their plan for the future. So as much as you can as a counselor, we all carry different caseloads, and it's really, really hard to be a touchstone for each student that we have in our building. But as much as you can make that personalized plan with them, or have those conversations or group talks or be in classrooms so that they have a little bit more deeper understanding of what they need, and then some other opportunities that are out there, and having a more individualized plan, I think the better that your students will understand what they need versus what they want.
Yeah, I think I like the model of the plan versus the fit. We do a lot of goal setting with our freshmen because they're so young and they have so much ahead of them. So I think I might steal your plan fit model.
You'll find you'll do a lot of that through your counseling career, because we work smarter, not harder as counselors. You just have to. So it's completely okay to borrow and use. All right. See, Jennifer, you had a question about rigor in the courses. What was your question?
Yes, my question was, how do you advise a student to stay in AP courses or join AP courses when they're worried that it's going to lower their overall GPA?
I might take this one again. So course rigor is a huge, it's a huge thing for students. I think especially a college-bound student who knows that many colleges look at the rigor of the classes that they need to take in order to gain admission into the university. I find that a lot of times with our students that are really focused in on a lot of our most rigorous classes, that they want to achieve the highest rigor. It can be a challenge. I think even our highest ability students to our students who are a bit challenged academically experience those same anxieties over what kind of grade am I going to get in this course? How's it going to affect my GPA? How should I stay in a course that might affect it a little bit more with weighted grades and things like that? And those, I think, validating how they're feeling about that, because I think that goes through the minds of students more than they actually share with us. I think a big part of that, and as a school counselor, you're just one piece of the puzzle, right? That I think the most important thing is knowing you're the counselor, but you are one piece of their puzzle, and the counselor to teacher relationship is so important. And having those conversations with those teachers about what can we do to better support our students in rigorous courses. So if students are struggling, is it trying to come up with some peer tutoring interventions? Do they need just some extra time built in their day? That could be a completely simple schedule change, for a study hall for the second semester or something like that. So having those conversations, but understanding that you're not doing this alone. You're not doing this in isolation. You're not in a silo. You have to enlist the help of especially the teachers that are teaching those subjects. Those relationships are extremely valuable. And then also enlisting your parents, being that liaison maybe between your student and your teacher, or helping that student and family understand that we want you to stay in this rigorous course. There is benefit to it because what you get out of the course is going to be so much greater than the actual grade. And that's a really hard thing for parents to understand, because, you know, our kids have been trained to focus on a grade. You know, we do assignments, we take tests to get a grade, to get performance. Our performance is constantly rated, and that's where it is. And so that's what we try to do at our school, especially when our students go into our AP classes for the very first time, is we really try to change that mindset a little bit, so they're not focused on the grade. We want them to focus on the process. We want them to focus on just being engaged in more rigorous coursework and knowing that the grade will work out. And that's a shift for our teachers as well. But it does let the students relax a little bit more so that they can get into a position of, okay, I'm going to focus on the process. I want to get better at this versus I need to complete this assignment or this assessment to get this grade. But in a situation, if you're not familiar or with your school because you're brand new or you haven't built those relationships yet, I think really starting with building the teacher relationship and building the student relationship and being able to support them individually with some different interventions or space in their day to help them stay in their rigorous course whenever possible.
I think that's great guidance, Kelly, because especially the part about focusing on the grades, right? And sometimes, like you said, students, parents, and teachers, we don't always emphasize the critical thinking skills they're going to get, the research skills they're going to get, and how far that's going to carry them when they enter college. And then the support piece that you mentioned, Kelly, is great too, because as we know, a lot of times if a student is moving from general or honors into AP, there could be a temporary grade drop, but as they make that adjustment and with the support from counselors and teachers, then they will usually recover. So helping them deal with that is also really, really important. Let's see. Next up, we have, let's see, I think it's you, Christina. You had a question about schedule changes?
I did. And Kelly actually just hit on a lot of the points of that question, because I was wondering, when you are going through those schedule changes and a student gets denied a class that they want, or, you know, they really thought that they were going to be in something that they planned to be in, but it wasn't a good fit, how do you then communicate that with the parents and the students so that they feel like we still care throughout the year? Because, you know, they have to sit in the classes and we don't, and then they might feel like we don't understand. But sometimes there are capacity challenges or, you know, all the challenges that come along with it. So how do you typically communicate with your parents through that and to the students?
Ooh, I'm happy to jump on this one just because it's been a big conversation in our office. And I did want to take a moment just to say, particularly to new counselors, I really want to inspire you to speak up if you see things that you're like, oh, why do you do that? Or what is this system in place for? Just because I speak for myself, I've been at my school for a long time, like almost 20 years. And so some of these systems have been in place for a while. And we've had new counselors come in and say, well, why do you do that? And I'm like, because we've always done it that way. I'm not really sure. And so a lot of times you guys come in with fresh ideas and fresh takes on things. So I just wanted to plug that as you are coming in new with fresh ideas and a new way of seeing things, don't hesitate to ask the questions and think outside the box on maybe, you know, encouraging your department to look at things a little differently. So that kind of plugs into my answer in some ways. We have a Google form and have had it in place for a long period of time, for several years. So we've kind of created a system. And I think our parents and our students get that this is a system that's in place. It's not subjective as much as it is. They have to answer the questions in the Google form. Will tell them you meet the requirements of a schedule change or you do not. And so it's really not us as a counselor saying that you aren't getting the schedule change. They're really kind of going through something that's not as personal. And so we only open up our schedule change form 2 weeks before school starts. So when we come for pre-planning or right around 2 weeks, And then we allow schedule changes to go until that first Friday of the first week of school. So we give a window of time that they're allowed to ask for schedule changes. And then we only allow them through the Google form. We ask them not to email us. We ask them not to come by, just because I work at a high school of around 1,500 students. My caseload is around 400, which is smaller than some people and larger than others. But just to help us manage that, we ask for them to use that format. And I think that's helped in a lot of ways, to where it's not me personally telling them the no, they're getting that through the form. There are some extenuating circumstances where they do get that no, and the parent will call or want to meet with someone, particularly if they have an advocate. That's come up before, where they have different resources that they're bringing from outside to come in and promote their reason for needing a change. And so sometimes what we can do is we can use our administration to have those conversations, or other entities within the building to have some of those. And so we really try as a department to stay consistent, so that it doesn't look like we are making changes based on who the student is or circumstances, and we are staying united, so that as the change comes, it comes from above us and not from within our office.
I love that so much. So if you could go ahead and share that Google Drive or Google Form, needed.
See, more sharing going on. That's what we
love
do.
it.
Thank you for that answer, Christy. And I love that the process. I think the key word there was having a system, having a process in place. So that way you also have fairness and consistency in place, because that will really contribute to, parents and students understanding why you have to say no. Great question. Let's see. We have another schedule change question. Actually, Christina, that's you too, or do you feel like she answered your question about equity and schedule changes? You feel like that one's
Yeah,
covered?
I definitely feel like Christy hit on them. I was asking just about being equitable in changing schedules, but I think having the system, having a process, using a Google form, and then allowing admin to kind of have the final say so that the department stays on a united front, that was really helpful.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, then let's see. Sierra, we're going to circle back around to you. You had a question also about rigor.
Yes, I wanted to know, what is a great approach to making sure that there's equality and access for all scholars, whether it's an advanced course or an elective course?
Well, I'll go ahead and answer that one. I think there's 2 or 3 main things that that maybe counselors can really do to make sure that courses are equitable. And, you can do it in a way where I think a lot of times course selection is done with emotion or subjectivity, where it is better when you're the school counselor to have things that are more objective, because you can manage student and family emotions a little bit better if it doesn't work out the way that they thought it was going to work out, or things like that. So I guess the first one in that, to make courses equitable and to help with, course selection in general, is data is your friend. And if, as a new counselor, you may not be familiar with all the different data points that you have access to within a school. And again, you're not in isolation, you're not making all of these decisions, but it is a really good idea to start to get familiar with your school, your state, your information that you have access to. So we use any measurement to try to get kids into our most rigorous classes. And we're talking all kids, and we try to find pockets anywhere that we can to make sure that our students have access to these courses, and it's not just for a select few. So we're using our PSAT data, we're using AP potential, our state exam scores from when they take them in middle school or early high school. If there's any placement tests that our departments use, grades, even any benchmark data, like if you do MAP testing at your schools, just some data points to help you arrive at some decisions, because you might be surprised as you compile all that information that there are some students that aren't getting the opportunities that they deserve those opportunities to even throw their name in the hat if they want that kind of course, want that kind of schedule. And you can make some really informed decisions that are not emotional, that are very much based in the information that you have. Now, with that being said, data is only one piece of the puzzle, obviously, because we know that it doesn't tell the entire story of a student. You can have as much data as you want on a student, but it really doesn't tell you the entire story. And that's where you come in as a counselor, as one adult in their life, who might know other things because you hopefully have built relationships with your students or starting to build those relationships. That you want to know their motivations, their interests, their talents, their work ethic, what they want to do versus what they can do is sometimes different. So sort of identifying those may not be, it might not be as apparent in the data, but you have some of those other things that might nudge you to say, hey, I really do think that this student might be a good candidate for a more rigorous or challenging course. Again, relationships with your teachers, understanding that, hey, I have this student I really want to recommend for this course. They might not be on your radar, but here's why I think we should look into it. And then how do we best support them? And as you start to do this a little bit more, you're probably going to identify pockets of students. This won't be a student, but it will be maybe several students that, hey, we want to bring them in. We want to bring them into that conversation of, we can support you, we can help you, but we really want to give you this opportunity to take this class and see how you do. And because we know it's going to prepare you for something bigger than just this course itself. And I think through that, identifying some of those supports, knowing that they're supported, your students that maybe are just hanging out in general classes, that find it very comfortable there, if they know that they are supported between teachers and counselors and the team that's around, they might have a better feeling about jumping into something that maybe they don't feel prepared for, but at the end of the day, they're going to be very proud of themselves for taking on such a big initiative for themselves.
Thank you, Kelly. I definitely agree that sometimes some students just need a little push. Like they can't see the bigger potential, the potential that they have within themselves. They're trying to just comfortable where they're at. So thank you so much.
Great question, Sierra. Kelly, I'm actually going to throw a question to you now from the audience that sort of ties into what you were just talking about. So after you look at all the data and then the non-data pieces that you were talking about, what if a counselor has a student who they want to be in an AP, but when you look at all the things in front of you, you're concerned about whether this student should actually take that jump at this time? And what guidance or how do you handle that, or what do you say?
That's a really great question, because that's, I think that is a common occurrence that counselors will have from time to time. So I think it is worth talking before having the discussion with the student, is having discussion with that student's teachers about overall performance in the class, if there are any, sort of red flags as to could they handle this. Sometimes just in having that conversation of like, well, in biology, this is what we're seeing, or there's, you're not turning in assignments really on time. What's that? Like, tell me more about that. Like, what are your obstacles about getting work in? Are there pinpoints that maybe are common occurrences amongst all of the students' teachers, where you can identify, okay, if we want challenging work, this is what we have to do. This is what we have to demonstrate to teachers, aside from what the grade is, but sometimes it's even work completion or back to the work ethic part of it. So I think maybe identifying some of those and then knowing your classes that you have to offer, that maybe the AP or honors course that they are seeking might not be the best fit, but maybe there is another honors course or AP course that would be a better fit. Our sophomores, that's their first opportunity to take AP, and it's AP US History, which is a very intensive course. It is content heavy, writing heavy. That might not be the best starting point for students. And so we do have discussions with students who maybe desire that course, but a lot of evidence is showing us that they're truly not ready. We want to open the opportunity, but we also want to make sure that they can float, that they are not going to sink even with supports that we have built into place. So maybe it's having a conversation of, maybe it's AP computer science principles. We want to still give you that opportunity to have access to a rigorous course, but that's more of a project-based course. And that one might tend to have an opportunity where students feel a little bit more comfortable because it's not just so content heavy. And it's not a traditional, what most students and families think of as an AP course. So I think it's really knowing what you have to offer then at your school and seeing if you can sort of package that with the student and the family as, hey, this might be a better option as a starting point. And if we find success there, then let's see what the other opportunities are. And maybe that is the push that they need, but maybe setting that up where they might not have all that information too. I mean, I'm thinking about an outsider thinking they think every AP course is the exact same. Well, no, that's my responsibility to kind of share with them, hey, there are some differences with all of this. So we think that this might be a better fit for your student or for you versus this other class. So I think knowing that and providing that information to student or the family, if they have those kinds of questions too, if you can package it in that way, you might have a lot more success with their buy-in and maybe a lack of a disappointment for them.
I appreciate that, because what you're talking about is still giving them an opportunity, but like you said, you want to make sure they are academically prepared, mentally prepared, work ethic prepared to be successful, because we don't want to set them up for failure. But you have to be able to convey that message in a kind and caring way, where it doesn't feel like gatekeeping, but you're providing still a path to that. But it might be better to start here so you can build those skills. Thank you for sharing that, Kelly. Let's see here. Ashlyn, I believe you had a question about transcripts.
Yes. So when I moved up to the high school, one of the most intimidating things to me was transcripts. And I have freshmen, so when I look at the transcripts, they're fairly simple. The last semester, we did a full day of transcript checks for our seniors. And that was intimidating, and there was a lot. And there was a list that we kind of worked through on different things to check for. But just in general, what are some common odd things that have stuck out on a transcript before, or things that you just look out for in general?
I don't mind answering this one. Just because we are in the throes of junior meetings right now, so we meet with all of our juniors to make sure that they know what to register for senior year. So I'm doing all those checklists and looking at those transcripts. And some of the things that we definitely look out for, so whether you're transcribing at the beginning of the year or during registration or just doing a check to make sure a student is on track, is just kind of looking for some themes sometimes, or those anomalies. Do you see where they have been cruising along really well and then they made like all D's or F's, or like a big change in their grade? So they really dropped one semester, because that can tend to show that something's happened, or maybe they were misplaced in classes that maybe were not a good fit for them. And that can lend to some conversations. Or you see they do really well. And so maybe they really connected with the teachers that semester, or they have kind of come into their own with some confidence. And I tend to see that a lot in freshmen that first semester. They really kind of struggle sometimes with a transition. And then they come back after winter break and you're like, who are you? And now you know what's going on. And I see you really thriving. And so sometimes you'll see those after different pivotal moments. We see that a lot of times in junior year too, when they start to see that they're fixing to head out into the world and it's about to get real. So they start to crank down a little bit and do a little more. So seeing some of that. Also, you can think about that transition. How often have they moved? Are they pretty transient? Have they attended a lot of different schools? And we've even had to go back and check transcripts from other high schools to make sure that they were transcribed correctly from one school to the other, because things can just look wonky sometimes. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to the former school to say, hey, do you mind sending me an official transcript just so I can see that things are laying out the way they're supposed to. And sometimes too, you can see where a student has taken the same class multiple times, just if they are transient or they've had a lot of failures, and just thinking through how to have those conversations with the family or their student and how can they recoup to get back on track. Then also thinking about maybe their class progression. You know, sometimes different districts have different progressions for things and things they put in place that yours may not, and those priorities and checking out for that. And I'll use our district as an example. We require a full credit of government. No other district around us requires a full credit. So almost every transfer student, we have to have the conversation of, I know you have a half credit for gov, but you have to now come back and take a full credit for government. And so just thinking of what are unique to your district needs and requirements, and how can that look if a student is coming in. Also, we've had on occasion where if they had an incomplete somewhere that maybe the school forgot to go back in and add the grade, going back and doing that. And even with us, sometimes that we're human and can make mistakes too. So making sure that you're checking that. And then homeschool can definitely be an interesting conversation as well, because sometimes those come from accredited schools or not accredited schools, and knowing your process in your district for how are you counting those credits, or how did the school maybe they transferred from and got homeschool credits from, how are they counting those? And so just kind of thinking through, looking for those red flags or just conversation starters. A lot of times that's how I view that, as those are ways to really start having some conversations and getting to know the students, is based on maybe some of those unique things that we see that pop up on transcripts from time to time.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I have 500 plus freshmen, and so, I mean, I can't lay eyes on all of them. But that you're right, it's a good opportunity to see something off and just have a conversation with them. So I think that's a good point.
Fantastic. All right. We're actually going to do one more question. And I love how when I'm looking at the audience questions, it's almost like you all chatted or somehow, because the questions that our panel is asking is right in alignment with the questions that I'm seeing in the audience chat. So we're going to take one more question, and then I want to let our new counselors know about some resources for continuing to learn and increase their knowledge. So let's see, who had the question? I believe it was you, Christina. You had a question about 504s and IEPs.
Scheduling was emails that I would receive from parents saying, oh, my son or daughter, they have this medication. So can they have a class that they like towards the end of the day versus the beginning of the day? And these just weren't things that I considered. So I do want to know, like, as a first year counselor, as Ashlyn said, like, we don't know our students yet, but as you get to know them and you have students that have 504s or IEPs, or your students without them that might just want to be in lunch with their friends because they speak a different language and they're new to the school. How do you navigate that? Like, it may not be as cut and dry as the form, but it's like, oh, I know this baby and let me try to help them out, you know? So just wondering how you navigate those spaces.
Oh, I'm going to take this one. This one's a hard one, because I think counselors, that wasn't something I was familiar with when I became a counselor. I wasn't a classroom teacher. I came from college world. So I came in here, and that was a really big learning curve of learning everything that had to do with special education. So one of the things that I want new counselors to know is that you are not expected to know all of this. This will be a growing process. And honestly, in the 15 years I've been a counselor, special ed changes so much. So there's so much to consider that you cannot be the sole responsible person for a student and how they move about their day and everything like that. You have to enlist the help of others. So your best friends in your building have to be your intervention specialists because they do know the kids better than you do, and that's okay. But a lot of times they will be closer to the sun than you are. They will understand their needs. And so if you entrust the help of them, they can help you define a schedule that would be most appropriate for those students. And in a student like in Ashlyn's case, when you have such a huge caseload, that can be very overwhelming to do and to manage. But when you enlist the help of others to kind of understand where the students are at or what their needs are, then you can kind of bring to the table some different ideas. So the intervention specialists work with them closely, whether it is in middle school, enlisting the help of your middle school people or where they're coming from, or their past intervention specialists, like our cycle through, they don't stay with the same intervention specialist all 4 years. So I usually refer back to the previous intervention specialist that's worked with them the past year. Your school psychs are going to be your secondary best friends because they're going to know on a deeper level where their disability is at or where their struggles are at. If you have lucky enough to have a 504 coordinator, or if that is yourself, you're gonna be familiar with some of their strengths, those students' strengths and weaknesses, and maybe even enlisting the help of admin because if a student on IEP has maybe a behavior goal, they might have some information on that particular student that you don't necessarily have because, fingers crossed, you're not dealing with anything when it comes to behaviors, right? So in asking some of those questions, I think it's really appropriate for a school counselor to maybe ask some questions. And I would even think in a bigger school system, to maybe manage this in a Google form or something like that, is picking the brains of intervention specialists. When is it best for this child to have math or language arts, depending on their needs? Is there a proper time? And then does it work within your master schedule, obviously, is the secondary question. But that might give you some information that you wouldn't necessarily have at your fingertips in your role. Also, I think it's really important, sometimes this gets overlooked, but proper electives for a student. Not every student should start with a foreign language their freshman year, especially if they have, reading goals or language goals or comprehension. Like if they are still struggling with language arts, it might not be best to have an elective like a foreign language. So do we package as a freshman a different type of elective for them, and really making sure that they have the support that they need throughout the day? So for us, it's always consultation, and no matter how good your student information system is, you're probably going to be doing a lot of hand scheduling for your students with needs, because your system's not going to know all of these outside influences and environmental factors that you are going to know. So just kind of being prepared to making some of those adjustments so that your student is set up as best as they can be.
Absolutely. Great answer, Kelly, because what's in that answer is that counselors, you are not alone and you're not expected to do this. This is a big task, course selection. And so hopefully you heard from Christy and Kelly lots of great advice. There were a few questions in the audience chat about the college process. We're going to have another one of these Q&A sessions next month on February 19th. So you'll receive a follow-up email with registration for that. We'll put some resources in there for you about what we talked about today. We have 11 new counselor modules for you on our counselor site, where we talk about a variety of different topics. So I'll send you those resources as well. But I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you want CEU credits, stick around. The quiz will pop up. But please complete the eval. This is our first time doing a webinar of this sort. And so hearing your feedback, if this was helpful to you, is really going to be beneficial for us. And so we're going to send out the survey now. Just want to see if you feel a little more confident now that you've heard from our panel about course advisement. We thank you all for all that you do in the service of students. You are in the best profession of the world. Lean on each other and give yourself grace, because it's a career where you're going to continue to be learning. Like Kelly said, even 15 years in, I'm 20 something years in, still learn something new all the time. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you to my fantastic panel, my veteran and my newer counselors. We greatly appreciate your participation today. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Did you find this content for counselors useful? Make sure you check out our YouTube channel and our website at collegeboard.org/counselors to find tons of resources and videos designed specifically for high school counselors.